got it.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to Social Selling for Newbies. We're all back. This is great. So I'm Tom Burton. I'm here with Brandon Lee and Carson Eddy, and we've added another for today, Adam Ritchie.
How are you?
Welcome, everybody.
Thanks.
You know, with our pre-going live chatter, I was totally expecting you to say social selling for dummies and just call us a bunch of dummies, Tom.
Oh, that's a good
You
one.
know what I realized too, that we have to show the audience is that Adam and I learned how to do a virtual high five.
There it is.
And now, yeah, we're gonna have a great
You guys are so cute.
Yeah.
And then the funny part though for everybody is when Tom and I started doing it, we just flailed all over the place. We had wasn't gonna happen.
We are certainly not coordinated like they are.
No, absolutely
the
not.
Midwest guys are well coordinated. You know,
Yes,
that's true.
yeah,
So,
we are. Yeah.
so
Especially my Lions.
welcome, Adam, and great to have you here. So, Adam, you're the Chief Relationship Officer at Purpose Point.
Yeah.
Take a second and introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do and you know why you're a fan of social selling, and then we'll jump in from there.
Yeah, awesome. No, I appreciate it, Tom. I've been with Purpose Point for a couple of years now. As the Chief Relationship Officer, it's my responsibility to kind of continue to reach out and build relationships with any prospective clients, and even on the partnership side as well. It's always been kind of a natural thing for me to build relationships, and honestly, using social and using LinkedIn specifically has been a really good, easy way to do that. Purpose Point, we're really a leadership experience company. So what that means is that we really focus on bringing, whether it be a workshop or leadership retreats or leadership conferences, to companies who really need it and companies who are looking to kind of upskill their leaders and take them to the next level. So it's kind of me in a nutshell. It's been my last couple of years anyway.
Oh, great.
So.
And yeah, before we go too much farther, I know we want to welcome, we have Butch from Alpharetta, Georgia today, but we also want to welcome all of our podcast listeners, live listeners. Please jump in, comment, let us know where you're from or what you're at. And so welcome everybody.
Awesome.
So Adam, why don't you just start off, tell us a little bit, and then we'll just jump in. As you know, we all like to jump in with plenty of questions, but tell us a little bit about, the show today was about frustrations, right? Having frustrations with maybe social selling and
Sure.
kind of looking at what those frustrations are, how to adapt, and really how does that carry into next year and all of that.
Yeah. No, let me rewind my career back a few years ago, and I was a business development manager for a manufacturing company here in Metro Detroit, and that was really when I got wind of this idea or this concept of social selling. At the time, I was just kind of dabbling in LinkedIn. I was a consumer, if you will. Like I was just on there, just consuming content, not really creating any. Every once in a while, I would create a post, and really wasn't a whole lot of meat behind it, if you will. We ended up working with a consultant for a little while that implemented a whole bunch of spreadsheets and stuff like that, and I really kind of grasped the idea of like, okay, if you're consistent with this and you have a laid out strategy, it can actually be extraordinarily powerful. And as a result of that, I was able to gain quite a few clients at that role, and then the role I got promoted into thereafter. I think the biggest thing is just that consistency, right? And understanding what the strategy is that you're going after, and then keep doing it. I'd say the biggest frustration from that time, was just the tracking of it, just the trying to understand. Like I said, I had this spreadsheet that had 78 columns on it, and each of my leads were listed, and I'm trying to track, okay, I commented once, commented twice, commented 3 times, it was a lot to manage. And so that was a major frustration of mine, and me being a very low attention to detail, it drove me up the wall. But that's definitely where were my first experience. When Brandon started wearing those shirts that said "Social Selling Sucks," I just chuckled, right? Like it was just brilliant. So
I'm at a crossroads on those. It's really been interesting, and some people respond well, and then other people I've honestly taken a little bit of crap about it, and what I mean. But I think I'll stick it out through 2023 because what most people think of social selling, it does suck. It's because they're really bad definitions of social selling.
yeah.
But and not to get us off on tangent stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and the other side of that thing too is, anything worth doing is hard, right? And social selling is no different, right? Like whether you want to call it social selling or whatever else you want to call it, social networking. I mean, it takes work, and it takes consistent work. So, yeah.
Couldn't have said it better. And Adam, thanks for being on. I always love hearing people's kind of social selling origin story. Like, how did you get started? Obviously, we all do it for a specific reason, right? I think we all understand the statistics that kind of drive the impetus for an adoption of a social selling strategy, right? I mean, we hear that sellers are more effective. We hear that, deals are larger, et cetera, when we utilize social selling. But I think all of us have also been in that boat where we've done and tried some things, they didn't work. And so we've gone back to what I like to call comfortable ways of mediocrity or comfortable ways of failing. But I know my process has changed dramatically over the years. And I'd love to hear about yours, because I think, our audience is a lot of people that are, I think we've run some polls on our page. I think our audience is at a place where we believe social selling works. We're tinkering. We're not pros. And even somebody like me who's been doing it for a long time, I don't purport to even know what I'm doing some of the times. I'm just trying to figure out how to optimize the new tool, and if it's something that I should have in my tool set. So I'd love to hear about your journey. How have your tools and processes and philosophies around social selling changed over the years?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, Carson. And I would say, I'm definitely a newbie on this call, right? Like it is still in process, and it is changing just because I primarily have gotten to know this guy and this guy, right? Like, yeah, back to the high fives, right? But yeah, historically it's been it's kind of been brute force as far as just posting and trying to gain engagement, and really I wouldn't call it, there was no brick road, right? As Tom likes to say, there was no strategy to take anybody anywhere. It was just posting content to post content, right? And a lot of times I'd get engagement, and I would start to interact with people, and hopefully drive a little bit of curiosity about what it is I'm doing. But again, it was just brute force. And I think, going into 23, we're getting ready to kind of relaunch a new website. We're getting ready to kind of refocus our efforts from where we have been through 2020 and 2021. And it's really going to be a lot more strategic as far as, okay, how do I make sure that I'm commenting with solid comments that are actually adding value to somebody's life? How do I start engaging with people's posts that are my target audience, so that they recognize who I am whenever I do go for a reach out, or they end up moving their way out of that anonymous zone and into something where they're actually ready to engage. So
beautiful. And something that dawned on me here is that purposeful increases probability. That's one of the things that I think we've explored a lot. What I've learned mostly from Brandon and Tom has been the value of that quality content when you're commenting and when you're going out and proactively engaging in what other people are already talking about. See, I've used social very differently over the years because I've utilized it to try to create first degree relationships so that I could ultimately get meetings. But the beauty in this is that all of these things can happen in parallel, and they complement one another. An executive may not take to me the very first outreach that I make. However, if I continue to like and comment and tag their organization on all of the wonderful things that we're doing together, that is going to ultimately increase the probability that I get that meeting. Now, you alluded to something for this coming year, Adam, and I want to hear more about the strategy. How are you thinking about this coming year? What have you kind of taken from your history of doing social selling? Maybe that you're going to incorporate, maybe that you're going to double down on, or maybe that you're going to jettison because it's like, hey, this didn't work as effectively. I want to gravitate toward this. Tell us more about your 2023 strategy.
Yeah, so like I mentioned, we kind of we're pivoting a little bit our marketing strategy, and we've got our COO and we've got a marketing director that are working with us that are really kind of driving a lot of that strategy. But the biggest thing for us, and in the space that we're in, so our mission at Purpose Point is to make sure that companies steward their people well, so they go home happy and fulfilled every day, right? Like we spend more time at our jobs than we do anywhere else. And it's, we shouldn't go home and give our leftovers to our kids, right? We should go home and bring our best selves to our kids. And
okay, who's got the dog?
I'm sorry, it's mine.
Is that your end? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I just figured people are going to hear it. We might.
I know. I'm like, I'm trying to ignore him. He's it's his birthday,
No.
Well,
happy birthday.
I know. So, but really what we're doubling down on is like the fact that at some point in time, companies and organizations and associations are going to bring people together in 2023. How are you doing that very purposely? And how are you doing that to combat this economic winter that we're facing, right? And whatever that may be.
So you're a big part, right, of what I like to talk about, and I talk about in the book, is having the right content and the right strategy at the right time. So it's not just a matter of shotgunning out content and crossing fingers and spraying and praying, but how do you then organize and put things in the right sequence? Is that an area that you're spending time on as well, and kind of working out how you want to communicate and do that going forward into next year?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the things that I know Brandon and I have talked about him kind of coming up and helping us out with some of this stuff. And really where it's a learning curve for me. But understanding that, there's people out there that have no idea who we are, right? No idea what we offer. How do we walk them down that yellow brick road, as you put it, Tom, so that they understand those three things and they know those three things. They can trust that we have their best interest in mind. They can really lean into what it is that we're bringing, the value that we're bringing to their conference, or the value we're bringing to their workshop, whatever that is. So laying out that strategy to do it very succinctly is exactly what we're trying to do in 23. So
you're going after, you're going to be communicating with a lot of people who really don't know what you do, and certainly don't know the benefit of what you do and how that could really help them. And as you said, sort of maybe a period of an economic winter or an economic slowdown, you need to be able to show them by doing some of the programs and even events that you're talking about, that actually you're going to have to get them to that point of demand, right, before they're going to consider spending that level of dollars.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
and especially as you're pivoting into a new market or kind of a new customer profile, in a way, you're sort of starting from scratch. You're sort of starting from ground zero, which we're very interested to see how this plays out over the next.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a little bit of a blessing and a curse. It's really nice because a lot of people know Purpose Point for our event. That being the Purpose Summit, which is going on in May again next year. And it's like, even when we talk to people like, oh yeah, I went to Purpose Point. Like, no, you went to the Purpose Summit. And so like, we just stopped fighting the tide, and we're like, you know what, let's just go all in, and Purpose Point is an events company. Like we will do that. And then we have a community of people that still do coaching and training and speaking on the other side. It's not where we're stopped doing that, but our marketing efforts are all going to be on events, custom events, leadership retreats, things like that. So it's a little bit of a different animal.
You hit on something really important there, Adam, and I want to make sure that we pause for this and kind of sit in it for a second. And it's around like the element of building community and
Oh,
the
I love it.
value and how social selling can really do that and establish that. And I think what you've done here is you've kind of built a multifaceted, diversified portfolio. I always like to tell people that like your social selling process is going to be personal to you. You need to figure out the mediums that you're comfortable with, whether you use video, different platforms, things like that. Shout out as well to my boy Jason Fry, who's on #HealthySalesLeader. And if you want, like, I'd love to have people post in the chat too. Like, how are you thinking about social selling for 2023? Would love to have some engagement there. But back to the community element, I always thought about that because, you know, I've ended up in sales environments in my career that I wasn't necessarily on paper qualified for, but I always kind of had that focus of how can I create relationships and then ultimately build community around what we're doing. And if you invite people to things, and it's not me always calling or messaging to pitch slap or, you know, tell everybody everything that I sell, it's more, hey, let me invite you to this and that. And maybe it's more of a free event where a relationship can be built. I'd love to hear how did you arrive at that strategy, and how do you see that continuing to evolve? Because I'm very intrigued by that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, ultimately we are designed to be communal beings, right? And this idea of everybody going virtual, going remote. I mean, I was talking to a friend of mine the other day who works at a large, you know, OEM here in Metro Detroit, and he's been virtual his whole 9 months of being on board, and he hardly interacts with anybody, right? And it's like we really need to focus on bringing people back together, because some of the most innovative, inspirational things come out of the opportunity for us to get together as community. And you know, I'm working on a talk right now, actually for Brandon and his crew over there, about learning how to lead in a VUCA world, right? And VUCA is that volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous world. And I've kind of taken that and I've flipped it over, right? So it's okay, how do you be vulnerable? How do you be understanding? How do you really be caring? And that caring piece is that whole idea of community. And you know, Gary Ridge, one of our speakers, who is the former CEO of WD-40, calls it a tribe, right? They're there to feed and protect one another. And you know, we need to get back to that. And whether we still stay remote in our workplaces, we need to be very intentional about bringing people together in that community environment.
That's powerful. I mean, especially amidst a tough time. I love that you called that out, Adam, because like I think about selling advertising, you know, back in 2006, 2007 on the phone, and, you know, tough times for certain markets that we were calling into. Deals happen as a byproduct of relationships, period. And we can form relationships right now. They may not have the budget. Things may look different. The value that we bring may look different than it did a year ago to our customers. A lot of our conversations right now are about doing more with less, or optimization of costs and things like that. But let me tell you, like, social selling can create relationships and nurture relationships right now, that when a deal is able to be done, it'll be done with you because you invested in that relationship. And that's why I think people need to really double down right now on social selling, building community, and being there and being present with customers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and
it's being intentional too about that community. So,
and that speaks to the mindset issue that we've talked about a lot. And you know, I did a post today and I talked about the whole social selling sucks and why do people think that, and various things that I've had conversations with C-suite or sales leaders that said, oh yeah, social selling's great, they should do that on their own time, or we don't have time for it all. So much is the mindset that social isn't selling. Social is part of your sales process. But if you use social to sell, it's going to fall flat on its face. It's the pitch slap, it's everything else. And I think the more we can talk about community building, and even if it's building the community in our own team is awesome, and using social as a tool to do that, because then we're letting the public see us engage each other as a team, and that's all brand building, and that's all more touches that are happening, or it's building community as a salesperson or as a leader and building community with your industry. Again, it's all publicly seen, but that shift for all of us of this is about building community. This is about building rapport. This is about earning eventual opportunities for a sales opportunity, not get a call and pitch right now. I think then, we're all just better off if we start thinking about it that way.
That's a very astute observation, Brandon. And I would love to carry that out too to the internal organization conversation. I think you hit on something really important there, Brandon, because I know that when I see my executives be very active on social, and when I say active on social, I don't mean reposting or repurposing company news all the time. Sure, there's a space for that, but seeing the human element, seeing the sports teams that they're rooting for, seeing their, a copy of their Christmas card, whatever that looks like, those are the types of things that I think humanize leaders as well. And I've seen an astronomical effect of that social selling component where executives are leveraging social to build and nurture culture within their organization. Adam, I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you've seen that. What's the reaction and response of your teams?
Oh yeah,
employees.
Yeah, I mean that's honestly we're a small team, but there's a lot of companies that we work with that. Let me give you a great example. So there's a company we partnered with called Lippert Components. They're out of South Bend, Indiana. Jason Lippert is the CEO of a $7 billion publicly traded company, right? Like and all they do is make, RV, boat, automotive parts. That's what they do. They're a manufacturing company. Jason is extraordinarily active on LinkedIn. And it's awesome to watch the journey. And then you can see all the comments from employees on his posts, right? And now, and the thing about Jason is here's a prime example. Jason and I met through LinkedIn. I had followed him for years when I was doing metal fabrications. And then I moved over to Purpose Point. I loved the culture he was building at Lippert. And I reached out to him just through a LinkedIn message that said, "Hey, I love what you're doing. Would love to have you on the podcast." Right? Next thing you know, we're partnered up with him. We did the summit. It's just, but it shows that these execs they're accessible and they're human, right? Mm-hmm. And it just builds that community, builds that connection. So.
Yeah, and I think related to that, Susan asked a question, how to address the letdown of social engagement not resulting in in meetings right away. And, I think as we look ahead to 2023, I think, and this goes back to mindset, but I also think it's taking that one step further, which is actions, is we have to relook at the KPIs or the things that we consider to be important. And, I almost think that we almost need to have a KPI based on, hey, if I'm a salesperson or a sales team, how many relationships did I create this week? I think, Brandon, you were talking a lot about this with Alex last week on the show, is how many relationships am I creating? How many healthy connections am I creating in my industry, right? Even if those aren't translating to meetings, or certainly not meetings that are, business related, right? That are going to turn into pipeline. But talk about an investment in a period. It doesn't cost a lot to do that, right? It's not like you have to spend millions of dollars of marketing budget to accomplish that. And the asset that you're creating, not only for yourself, but for the company, which inherently becomes that community that you're talking about, is massive. And I think we're looking at things through the wrong lens a bit, Carson, do you have a take on that? Or
it's powerful, Tom. You hit on something that I want to underscore, and it's, what you said about the relationships that we're creating. We actually have a segment on our team calls every Monday where we, go kind of round robin, and it's what relationships did you create last week? And it's funny because when I got into the role that I'm in today, I had been known for my social selling previously as an individual contributor. And one of the things my boss told me was, okay, we get it. You're a great social seller. How do you create a team of social sellers? That was the big challenge. And I think that's a challenge for a lot of us as leaders is, wherever we are, whether you're leading from the seat of an individual contributor or whether you're an executive, how can you influence and impart some of this wisdom with others in your organization so that it continues to perpetuate the brand. Now, I love Susan's question so much because there is a letdown of social engagement not resulting in meetings right away. I always go back to the texts. Napoleon Hill is big for me. So Think and Grow Rich. Most people give up just prior to the point where they would have realized success. And that's why people are successful, is because they continue to push on. And I've always done it from a numbers game standpoint. I can control the quality of my message, the quantity of my outreach, and the consistency of execution. We were talking about consistency earlier. I know that if I reach out to 100 people, I'm going to get some meetings. And so that's where I've really tried to, I'm happy if I reach out to 100 people and get a meeting. I'm okay with that. I'm willing to do that if I know that statistic. And so it feeds back to what you guys were all talking about as far as that metric, that KPI. If I know I got to reach out to 100 people to get one meeting, let's go.
Yeah, and can I
go ahead.
piggyback on that real quick and
Yeah.
pull out my normal hammer that I beat up is what exactly, for Susan, what exactly do people mean by social engagement? Because as much as I agree with Carson, as if it's 100 people to get a call, it's worth it for them. But what's the activity that they're doing? If it's 100 direct messages that are asking for a call, then that's crap activity, and you should stop doing that anyway, because it's not, the letdown is because the activity you're doing isn't a high quality, a high returning activity. And that's why my whole thing with social selling sucks, is because I want to trigger with people to go, well, wait a minute, I thought you were a social selling guy or whatever. And my whole reason for doing that is, well, what do you mean by social selling? There's a lot of letdown around this didn't work, or this doesn't work. But if you dig a little bit deeper, it's like you produced low quality activities and had expectations of high quality results.
When I think tying to that, Carson, even if you got one meeting out of contacting 100 people, if they're high quality engagement, you're going to end up maybe with 20 or 30 healthy connections out of that.
That's right.
It may turn into a meeting later on, or a referral, or whatever.
Yeah, and if it's going to lead to a 9-figure deal, like we talked about,
Right.
willing to do that, go through those paces. But I agree with Brandon. It's all about, do I have the right messaging that's going out there? Do I have a diversified portfolio of touch points? Am I going out and doing the diligence of contacting, commenting, posting, liking, those types of things? You can't discriminate against any of these possible ways to create or nurture a relationship.
And I find a lot of times when people say, "Oh, social engagement hasn't worked," it's they're posting things and nobody's engaging with it.
Yeah.
It's like, well, let's peel back this onion a little bit. What are you posting? Where are you engaging? Because for me, and I think there's an irony here, of course, but commenting is the manifestation of listening in a social world, right? That's the way we demonstrate that we've actually listened to somebody. And we all know from How to Win Friends and Influence People, if you're not listening to other people, then you're not building influence with them.
Yeah.
And they're just going to ignore anything that you post because you've never listened to them.
Right. Yeah, you can't talk somebody into a deal, but you can listen them into one, right?
Hey, but you can also talk yourself out of a deal a lot.
Yeah, you can unsell a deal really fast.
Yeah.
You guys in the same building? Is that how it is? You must be really close, because those high fives are just way too tight. No, I think that's awesome, and I look ahead, right, and I think this even goes beyond 2023. Is as technology gets better and better, right? Technology can help us predict or help us guide us to who we should be selling to and what we should be selling and how do we expand and who has intent and all of that. It can help us provide that guidance, but it can never replace the relationship or the connection. Mm-hmm. And I think the relationship, as technology gets better and better, the value of the relationship and the healthy connection gets higher and higher. And if I were to look ahead into next year and certainly beyond, that's why I believe that we will see more adoption of social selling as we're discussing it. because the asset, this being created through those relationships and that community and those healthy connections is super valuable and can't be automated. I can't put that into, so how do you do that in a way that, and again, that's a lot of building that yellow brick road, right? It's how to build that relationship and build that demand and build that trust so that you have that opportunity to build the relationship. But I really believe that's where we're headed.
Yeah, I agree. And I had a friend of mine that, paid for one of these LinkedIn services. It wasn't an automated service, but they basically had a team of people that were posting for them. And then they would the same 256 people that they were all in their network were commenting on each other's posts. And right. And it was just he's like,
a pod at its best.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, oh, you spent how much on that? And, probably, shared some of Susan's frustrations too, right? I don't know what came out of it. I mean, he put a lot of content out there, but it wasn't the right content. And there was a couple pieces that they put out there that he called them out, take it down. I don't agree with what you just posted. That's not my brand. So I think it has to be you and your individual voice. And, Carson, you talked about growing a sales team, right? And giving them the guide rails that they have to work within and the KPIs they have to hit, but knowing that it's unique to them and it's their own voice, and there is no cookie cutter, posting strategy. It's kind of unique. So
I was interested, Carson, in what you said when you did your round robin and you asked about how many relationships did you create this week. How has that evolved? Is that at the beginning where people are like, what are you asking me? Or is that evolved? Or are you seeing that people are more, I guess, proud or more trying to spotlight the relationships? Or just how is that dynamic, moving in that conversation?
It does two things. One, it celebrates a win that isn't necessarily a deal getting signed. And so it reinforces that positive behavior. The other thing of how it evolves, when you start out doing it, I always try to do maybe something that looks and feels a little bit different than what I think the average manager is doing. We can all very easily show up and ask about pipeline every day, every week. I mean, yes, of course, we have to look at our forecast. We have to look at our funnel. However, if we're also looking at, okay, how are we doing the things that we know are going to beget deals, it evolves over time, because at first it's maybe it's crickets, right? There's not as much sharing, but now that there's an expectation and there's that ability to share on a weekly call, when you've created a quality relationship or had a quality dialogue, those things grow exponentially. So you're not only reinforcing the positive behavior, but because you're shining a spotlight on that as a victory, people are doing it more and more.
I think that needs to be a best practice, a sales meeting best practice going forward for
100%. I love that.
There you
right?
go.
You get what you put your attention on, and if you're putting your attention on those quality relationships, you're going to get more of them.
Yeah, we also do a segment called "What Did You Learn Last Week?" and that was an idea of one of the folks on my team. And so we do that same segment every week, and it's just sharing those little nuances, because nobody can know it all. But collectively, if you've got a team of 40 people on a call and everybody's sharing a little nugget, we're all going to get a heck of a lot smarter.
That's awesome.
That's kind of like what I get from our show. I learn things from you two and then guests all the time, and there are a lot of times there's things that I think I've learned before, but I probably forgot, or all of a sudden the way you say it, and oh my gosh, and I'm jotting down notes and doing stuff. So yeah, like that.
Well, as to wrap up, this was about frustrations, right? And I think we've touched on a lot of things that can create the frustrations. I think that's what we've really unpacked a bit today, is what are the things that are going to, but let's wrap up by maybe each of us kind of give our take on what are things, and maybe they're a summary of what we've already talked about, but what do we see going into next year that we think will help to eliminate those frustrations and give and really give us another springboard to another level as it relates to this. Brandon, why don't you go first?
Why me? I think, I still think there's the mental challenge of what exactly I should be doing inside of social media. I think that teams and leaders need to get over the how much time is this going to take and start looking at social as another tool, as another channel that needs to be leveraged to the best that it can. What I think, getting over a lot of the common frustrations, if people were able to have that mindset around, I want to go build community by commenting on what other people are doing, or comment on comments and build community that way, I think that's a really, really powerful first step as you move into 2023.
All right, that's awesome. And I'll go next because I want to answer David's questions here that he said, does there anyone have any advice on how to get started with higher quality content, not get stuck in the weeds of low quality content that is likely to show up in their feed? And so I'm going to do a shameless plug on this, but that's exactly what I talk about in my book, The Revenue Zone. And I really do believe this is going to be more important, is how do you build a content plan and a content strategy that takes your prospect or your customer down that yellow brick road so they're getting content that's relevant at the right time in the right place, and that content builds demand. And part of what I have in the book and what's in David, please go to the website. There's a worksheet there. You can download it. It's called therevenuezone.com, where you can actually build a worksheet with this different content that's in here on how you want to lay it out over the course of the year. And whether you do that or you do it on your own, I think the real importance, and again, this will eliminate a lot of frustration going into next year, is having a content plan. And buyers don't buy linearly. I get that. It's not like they follow everything, but you can understand a bit about their journey and then align your content as best that you can to that journey so that you're achieving the best result and you're not just spraying and praying and hoping that something comes out. So I really believe content as a strategy in the right sequence and the right relevance is going to be a thing that will really help us in 2023.
Yeah, and I want to comment on that too really quick, Tom, is that content mix is huge, right? Breaking through the noise. Like, I know we've focused a lot on LinkedIn, but like that's one avenue for content, right? Like I have these personalized hard stock cards that I will hand write a note to somebody if there's something that I wanted to share with them. And there's a friend of ours named Kevin Monroe that has these "I'm grateful for you" cards, and you just send them to people and just say, "Hey, I'm super grateful for blah 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 blah," right? But it totally breaks right through the noise. It gets people out of the computer screen and continues to build that relationship. So that content mix, right? And that's why I love your Brickyard piece of your book, right? Like, let's find out. I mean, if you look at our Brickyard, like at Purpose Point, it could fill this room. It's insane with as far as the content mix and the strategy. But it's I think that's a really good point there, Tom. So sorry, I just wanted to comment on that.
No, thank you. So Carson, any final thoughts on how we can eliminate frustrations next year and get to the next level?
Absolutely. So loved Susan's comment as well. Social activities should be integrated and woven into sales activities and continuous enablement. I like to say social selling is just selling. It's leveraging all the tools at our disposal. David, you asked an important question as well that, we just kind of talked about. And I'm going to be very focused on two things. One, finding balance, really, because there's a lot of ways you can do very focused ways of outreach and scale ways of outreach, building community, doing events. But my encouragement is really be willing to try new things and see what works and what doesn't, and be flexible to adapt and pivot as you need to. One of the things I started doing recently that I'm going to do more of and lean in on is sending books that were written by our executives to customer executives. And how can we leverage these types of things to show the customer that we're thinking about them, but just get them to, on their own time and very passive sales effort, have them read more about our philosophies and kind of what we're all about, what we're endeavoring to do. And by doing those things, you can find synergies. I started a couple of years ago doing a webinar series and a newsletter. We've talked about some of these things before too. Very passive ways of sales. We're inviting people to check it out, but we're not trying to spray and pray or cram things down people's throat. And so as I'm thinking about 2023, I'm going to be a lot more intentional about some of those scale approaches, but also, to David's question, being intentional about going out and who do I want to cultivate a relationship with that I don't have already? I've got a lot of first degree connections that have kind of lied dormant. How can I maybe meaningfully engage them and their posts? And if you want to cultivate your feed in LinkedIn or Sales Navigator, go out and follow these folks and hit the notification bell so that when that CEO of that big company that you want to sell to posts something, you're notified. That's in your feed. You get a notification about it and you can go directly there and like and comment. There's a lot of great ways that you can get more focused, cut through the noise, and find a healthy balance of focused and scaled in the new year and beyond.
Can I piggyback on that, Carson, and just add something for people? Because I love everything that you said there. And my encouragement to people in doing that is don't associate social with fast or easy.
Yeah.
It's none of this is necessarily fast or easy. It's you take the same approach and the same attitude towards this as if you were going to networking events. Like you wouldn't go to an event for the first time and expect to walk out with, 10 closed deals. As we talk about, POs just don't start coming in the direct message. So have that same attitude that nurturing this takes time. So be diligent, try new things, as Carson said, but give yourself the freedom to know that relationship building, at least good quality ones, takes time.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good.
All right. Well, Adam, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
It was great to have all of us back again. It feels like it's been forever since we have all been in the same place at the same time. And I know we're trying to figure out what exactly we're going to be doing next week. It's the holiday week. So we'll do something. We just don't know what yet. But
well, hold on. Adam didn't give us his.
I thought he did.
Wrapping us up, right?
Oh, I thought he did. Sorry, I apologize.
Mine's super simple. Like my whole thing is plan the work the plan, and my goal is to really be very diligent about actually following through on the things that I know needs to be done and will be done. So, and Carson, I'm definitely adopting that. How many relationships did I create over the last week? That's going in my reports.
Love it.
So
that's good. I like it.
All right. Well, thanks everybody. Everybody have a great Christmas. That's right.
Yep. And Hanukkah ends on the 26th.
Brandon.
So we got Christmas and yep. Wait, there we go.
I do Tom, it'll look like I'm raising the roof.
Look at this. See? Yeah. All right. Thanks everybody.
Thank you guys. I appreciate it.
All right.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks everybody. We'll see you.